Working in WordPress, you have two main types of content: posts and pages. Posts and pages are used for very different things, so it's important that you understand both the similarities and the differences between them. What defines posts more than anything is how they're indexed. Posts are indexed based on 4 factors: publishing date, author, category, and tag. Each post must have a publishing date and an author attached that you can then sort based on, and each post must also be placed in one category. The tags are optional and can further help you relate the content to other pieces of content on your site. Categories are like overall defining descriptions of your content. Think of them as buckets you put things in. In an art gallery, a category could be something like painting or photography, whereas tags are more relational content that relates the specific item to other items that may have similarities to them. It's easier to understand if you see an example, so I'll show you an example in a little bit. Posts and pages also differ a bit in how they are presented on your website. Posts are generally presented in reverse chronological order. That's what you see on the front page of a regular blog. The most recent post appears at the top, and then as you scroll down the page, you get older and older content. Posts are also displayed based on categories and tags and authors. So at any time you can go and say, I only want to see posts by a certain author or under a certain category, or posts with a certain tag attached to them. Posts also have breakpoints. You'll often find that if you go to a website, you'll see on the index page, you have maybe an image and a short version of a story, and then there's a link, and when you click on the link, you get to the full story. Those are the breakpoints that you see inside posts. And finally, posts tend to have featured images. Those are the images that appear on indexes and on front pages that relate to the posts and are displayed outside of the main content. To get a better understanding of the posts, let's take a look at a website that has posts in it. This is a website called FrugalBits that we built for a company in Vancouver, and it's based largely on posts. This is the front page, and here we have a standard post on the top. It's under a category, which you see here is called the Daily Deal. It has a date, and it has an author, though you can't see it on the front page. If we scroll down, you see it has this button that says continue reading because the break line for this post is right here. So there's more content in the post, but you have to click the button to see the full post. In addition, you see that this post is under a category named food and drink. So if we click on that, we go directly to the index for all the stories that are under food and drink. And if we scroll down, you see that the post has a long list of tags. And if I were to click on any of these tags, I would then see a list of all the other posts that have those same tags attached. Finally, the post has a featured image. You see here, this post has this big image. And if I go and jump to the food and drink category, I see that same image, but in a smaller version here on the side, next to the short version of the story. You can also see these featured images in other elements on the site. For example, this site has an 8-story slider at the top that shows the featured image along with a category and the title for the most recent 8 stories. That was posts. What about pages? Whereas posts are organized as taxonomies, pages are organized as static, singular elements. They live on their own and are not really related to any other item. When I say they're not really related, that's a bit of an overstatement because in some cases you'll create pages that are children of other pages. Let's say, for instance, you have an About page. You may have a sub-page under the About page that shows a map of where you can find the location, or a sub-page that shows information about the different people who work for an organization. But generally, pages live on their own as static elements. The presentation of pages reflect this very well. Pages are presented as singular individual elements. So you don't have the categories, you don't have the tags, and you generally don't have any type of navigation associated specifically with the page content. One thing pages have that posts don't have in WordPress are custom templates. This means you can create multiple different views, so depending on the content of the page, you can display it in different ways. And finally, pages have dedicated URLs, so that it's easy to find them. For example, if you create an About page, usually the URL will end up being yoursite.com/about. If we jump back to the FrugalBits site, we can take a look at pages and how they differ from posts. From the top, I'm going to jump to this What is FrugalBits page. And you'll see that, first of all, it has this URL I was talking about. It just says frugalbits.com/whatisfrugalbits. And you see that although it seems to display fairly similar to the posts, there are some elements missing. We don't have a category, we don't have a date, and when we scroll down, you'll see we don't have any tags. We also have multiple different page templates within this website. This is the standard page template, which looks much like a post. But if we scroll down here and look at the editorial policy, you'll see that the layout of the page changes completely. Because this is legal information, we chose to take away all of the sidebars and the distracting information and just show the main content. So that leaves the question, when do you use a post and when do you use a page? Posts are generally used for time-based material. So if you think of yourself like a newspaper, a post would be anything that is news. Anything you put up on the website that is current right now and that you want to publish right away is a post. Basically, pretty much anything you're going to put on your website will be a post. Posts are also relational. That means if you ever put up something that relates in some way to something else you have on the website already, and you want to organize it so that if someone goes and sees one story, they'll automatically have a way of jumping to the next one, then you want to create a post. Posts are often part of groups. That means, for example, if you make a series of tutorials, you would put them all under one category so that they would all relate to each other and your readers would be able to find the other parts of the tutorial when they read one part. And posts are generally things that need to be organized. So anytime you want to publish some content and you think, does this need to organize in some way? If the answer is yes, in any shape or fashion, it will be a post. Finally, posts contain what I like to call ephemeral material. So if you're publishing something that may be current right now, but becomes irrelevant in about a week, then it would definitely be a post. Anything you put up that you think that people might be interested in right away, but then it might become less interesting over time, should be a post. And the cool thing about that is that maybe what you publish now and you think is interesting now and then it becomes less interesting later will become interesting again down the road. Because it's a post, then you can republish it later or put it up on your front page later, and then people will still be able to read it. Pages, on the other hand, are for static content. Basically, static content is stuff that doesn't really change. Things like about information, contact information, sitemaps, and so on. Pages are usually non-relational, meaning they don't really relate to anything else, so you don't have categories and tags or other ways of sorting based on it. Of course, in some cases, you can create these page trees where pages have parent-child relationships, but that's the only type of relationship one page will ever have with another page. Pages are also what's considered permanent fixtures. If you're wondering if something should be a page, think of it this way. Should this item have its own button on the main menu? If the answer is yes, then it's almost always a page. If the answer is no, or the answer is yes, but when I click that button, I should also see all the other stuff that is related to that, then it's a post. Pages are also usually macro level. By that I mean they're information about the overall site, or about the people behind the site, or about what's going on the site, rather than the actual content itself. And finally, pages are usually site information. Like I said, information about the site itself. Using pages and posts the right way in WordPress will help you create a site that is easy to navigate and content that is easily accessible to your visitors. The rule of thumb is to use pages for information that doesn't change and that is static, and posts for information that keeps updating and is transient.